Have you ever watched someone get exactly what they said they wanted and felt genuinely confused about how they did it? Not because they were smarter than you. Not because they had more resources or better timing or some advantage you couldn't see. Just because something in the way they moved through life was different. Something in the way they made decisions or stayed with things or responded when nothing seemed to be working. Most of us have felt that confusion at some point. And most of us, if we're honest, have quietly filed it under luck or personality and moved on. But what if it wasn't either of those things? What if the difference was something much simpler and much harder than luck? There was a man once who had nothing going for him by any conventional measure. No money, no credentials, no one waiting to give him a chance. He had a single thought, one clear, specific idea about where he wanted to end up, and he held on to it so firmly that it eventually reshaped everything around him. He didn't wait until conditions were right. He didn't build up a safety net first. He moved toward the thing he wanted with everything he had, which at that point wasn't much, and he trusted that the thought itself would be enough to guide him through what came next. And it was, not immediately, not without difficulty, but eventually, undeniably, it was. Most people hear something like that and feel a small lift, the kind you get from a good story, and then return to their lives unchanged. But there's something underneath that story worth staying with, because what that man understood, maybe without even being able to articulate it, is something most of us quietly forget somewhere along the way. A thought, held with real commitment, is not passive. It doesn't just sit there. It starts to work on you. It changes what you notice, what you're drawn toward, what feels worth doing, and what feels like a distraction. It reorganizes your attention in ways that are subtle enough that you might not even register them happening, until one day you look back and realize that everything you've built points in the same direction. The direction you decided on. The problem is that most of us don't really decide. We prefer. We hope. We entertain ideas about what we'd like our lives to look like, and we hold those ideas loosely enough that we can let them go without too much pain when life gets complicated. And life always gets complicated, so the ideas drift. The preferences fade, and we end up somewhere, not nowhere, but not quite where we actually wanted to be either. That gap between where you are and where you genuinely wanted to go, that's not a gap that opens up all at once. It opens slowly. A small compromise here, a postponed decision there, a moment where you chose comfort over direction and told yourself you'd make up for it later. And none of those moments feel significant on their own, but they accumulate. And what they accumulate into is a life that's fine, maybe even good, but quietly misaligned with something you stopped letting yourself want. Think about the last time you had a real thought, not a vague wish, not an idle fantasy, but a genuine, specific sense of something you wanted to build or become or move toward. What happened to it? Did you act on it? Did you let it grow? Or did you hold it for a while, let it feel good, and then slowly, carefully, talk yourself out of it? Most people, if they're being honest, will recognize that second pattern, not because they're afraid exactly, but because a real thought, one that actually means something, comes with a kind of weight that's uncomfortable to carry. It makes demands. It creates a standard. It means that when you make choices that pull you away from it, you feel that pull. And feeling that pull is harder than just not having the thought at all. So we protect ourselves by not deciding fully, by keeping things vague enough that we can't really fail, by staying in the comfortable middle ground between wanting something and committing to it. But that middle ground is where most things die quietly. The man on that freight train had left the middle ground behind. He had made something internal, a decision so clear and so settled that it didn't require daily maintenance or constant reassurance. It was just there, underneath everything, orienting him without fanfare. And that orientation changed how he experienced setbacks. When he arrived and got a small, unglamorous job instead of the partnership he was after, he didn't experience it as failure. He experienced it as proximity. He was close to where he needed to be. He was paying attention. He was learning things that would matter later, even if he couldn't yet see exactly how. The thought gave him a frame for interpreting his circumstances, and that frame made it possible to stay when a less directed person would have left. This is the part of the story that rarely gets told. Not the dramatic moment of breakthrough, but the long, quiet stretch before it, the ordinary days, the unremarkable moments, the work done without any guarantee that it would lead anywhere. That stretch is where most people turn back, not because they've been defeated, but because they've lost the internal thread. The thought has gotten fuzzy. The direction has gotten unclear. And without that clarity, The discomfort of staying starts to outweigh the pull of the destination. Keeping a thought alive through that stretch is a skill. It doesn't happen automatically. It requires something that looks a lot like faith, not religious faith, but something functionally similar. A willingness to keep moving towards something that hasn't revealed itself yet. A trust in the direction, even when the destination isn't visible. Most of us have that capacity. We just don't exercise it very often, because the world around us is constantly offering easier alternatives. Faster gratification, smaller risks, more immediate feedback. And there's nothing wrong with any of that, until it becomes the only thing you respond to. Until the only thoughts you act on are the ones that come with immediate confirmation. Because the thoughts that change your life rarely come with immediate confirmation. They come with uncertainty and effort and a long wait and the ongoing question of whether you're actually moving toward something or just fooling yourself. That question is uncomfortable. But it's also, in a strange way, necessary. Because the people who are willing to sit with that uncertainty, who can hold the question open without letting it dissolve their direction, are the ones who tend to actually arrive somewhere. The man arrived. Years after he had boarded that train with nothing, the moment he had been oriented toward finally appeared, an opening that others had missed or overlooked. And he recognized it instantly, not because he was lucky, but because he had been paying attention to exactly that kind of thing for a very long time. His thought had trained his attention, and his attention was ready when it mattered. Here's what I think is worth taking from all of this. Not the drama of the story. Not the idea that you need some grand, life-defining mission to focus on. Just this. The quality of your attention is shaped by what you've decided to move toward. And most of us have never fully decided. We have preferences. We have things we'd like. We have vague senses of direction that we follow when it's convenient and abandon when it's not. But a real decision, the kind that quietly restructures how you move through your days, is something different. It's something most people make very rarely, if ever. And yet it's available, right now. Not as a grand announcement or a public commitment, just as an internal shift. A moment of genuine clarity about what you actually want. Not what you think you should want, not what would look impressive, not what seems realistic given your current circumstances, but what you actually, honestly want. Followed by a quiet agreement with yourself that that's the direction you're moving in. That's how it starts. Not with a plan, not with resources, not with the right conditions finally falling into place. With a thought. Clear enough to return to, steady enough to guide you when things get uncertain. Real enough to make the discomfort of staying with it feel worth it. The world has a way of reorganizing itself around people who have genuinely decided something. Not because of any mystical force, but because of the very practical reality that focused attention finds things that scattered attention misses. Opportunities that were always there. Connections that were always possible. Moments that were always available, but that you only recognize when your mind is oriented toward something specific enough to recognize them. That recognition is what changes things. Not the circumstances, not the luck. The recognition. And the recognition comes from the thought. And the thought starts with the decision. You don't need a freight train. You don't need to arrive anywhere dramatic. You just need to be honest with yourself about the thing you've been holding at arm's length, the idea you keep almost committing to, the direction you keep almost choosing, the version of your life you keep almost deciding to build. Almost isn't enough. It never has been. But the distance between almost and fully is smaller than it seems. It's just a thought, held clearly, held consistently, and trusted enough to actually move toward. That's where everything else begins.